I'm excited. Frankie Russo, straight out of Brooklyn. You better believe it. I'm excited, man. The last few days, last week, I had a problem with my laptop. So that's the reason why I didn't make it with my YouTube live show. And then I became a Scope Silver VIP broadcaster. So I'm excited about that. So, I'm still, always I'm working toward going back to broadcast, obviously. So that's where we are at this point. We're doing very well on social media. The beginning of March, our impressions were uh, amplified impressions. We're looking at 900 million. Direct impressions, this is time data. Impressions was 800 million. This was like the beginning of March, but since then, Twitter has been messing with the account. So we're gonna launch a campaign very shortly with the website and the live broadcast with Scope and YouTube Live. Where I'm at. If this didn't work today, I would have went right into the Scope show that we do at around 9 o'clock. But I'm happy that I'm back with the YouTube Live. It's working. So let's get started. I got the Russo disclaimer. Outside looking in. We're not on any congressional oversight committees, nor are we on any international atomic energy agencies. Joint Chiefs of Staff, no. National Security Council, no. We don't have access to classified documents. With court papers, judges' decisions, peer-reviewed journal articles, and well-researched open source articles, we search and investigate for, in all likelihood and all probability, quote-unquote statistical significance. And it's from there we try to derive and go to reach responsible conclusions on the data that we have in front of us. So that's where we're at right now. Russo disclaimer. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few sidebars, and then we'll get to some real stuff that I'm really interested in, that I wanted to do last week. So, all right. The Daily Caller. Congress considers splitting the Ninth Circuit. This is the Daily Caller. Congress considers splitting the Ninth Circuit. Held a hearing on possibly splitting the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. The Ninth Circuit is recently serving as the primary antithesis to President Donald Trump. Ninth Circuit judges, including Judge Thomas, Judge Kozinski, and Judge Carlos B., gave testimony before House Committee on the Judiciary Subcommittee on Courts, Property, and the Internet. All three judges, like most of their Ninth Circuit colleagues, support the current configuration and oppose splitting the court. The subcommittee's chair, Republican Congressman Eisner, said the court has become too unwieldy to operate efficiently. At 12,000 cases, the court hears twice as many appeals as the next largest circuit court per year. The court also has the largest geographic jurisdiction in the country, running as far as the Arctic Circle and as south as Arizona's Grand Canyon. Wow. Only 1/5 of the country's population sits in the Ninth Circuit. As such, the court's massive dock, generating, it's a number of cases, generating lengthy turnaround times in decisions, and can make access to the courts challenging for the average citizens. So that's where we're at with this. Interesting. The Congress considers splitting the Ninth Circuit. Daily Caller. That's interesting. Here's another interesting one. It begins. Bots are learning to chat in their own language. Wired.com. That's an interesting. Why am I not shocked? the bots that are on the internet are now learning to chat in their own language. Interesting, right? Here's another question that we're going to hold off on. Are challenging pensions about to bring hell to America? I hope not. Are collapsing pensions? Zero hedge fund, Tyler Durden. It was authored by Mark Slavo, and the publisher is Tyler Durden from Zero Hedge Fund. Great website. You got to check it out. Zero Hedge Fund. So, along with the student loan debt bubble and other major financial factors, the looming pensions crisis is bound to be the death of all of us because it's based on future promise to pay, and it has long been a benefit dangle to solve strikes and union disputes because in the end, it is just more debt, whether private or public. So we'll see what happens with this. All right, we're going to keep an eye on this, as we're going to keep an eye on the Fed hike, the so-called Fed rate hike. I don't pull myself off as an economist, but I do follow the market daily, and I know there were times when they tried to eke during the Obama administration. They tried to eke up the interest rate like 0.25 or something like that, and it caused the stock market to go into a downturn. So at times, so we'll see what happens because they're talking about multiple Fed rate hikes. So we'll see what happens. All right. So I'm going to put these two articles on hold because I want to see where we end up on this other thing. I'm going to put these on hold. And I got this other one, Fed judge in Hawaii puts Trump ban on hold. So that's unfortunate. DT's claiming he's going to have to go to this AP, Associated Press. I'm sorry, I wanted to get these articles out last week, but I had a problem with my laptop. And hopefully we got it fixed. It seems like it's working pretty well. So we'll see what happens there. So that's where we're at with that. And then I got this interesting article. Feds hit debt limit again. Debt now exceeds limit to set in 2008 by 8.5 trillion. Obama inherited a mess. He made it worse. He exacerbated it, if you want to be honest about it. And this is CNS news. So basically, with the close of the day in March 15th, which is last week, the period in which the Congress suspended any legal limit on the federal debt expires, and as of tomorrow, which was March 15th, the limit on the federal debt will be set at whatever the level of debt happens to be. Since Obama signed the Bipartisan Budget Act, there had been no legal limit on the amount of money the federal government could borrow until now. That law included a section entitled Temporary Extension of Public Debt Limit. It is said that the law imposes a limit on the federal debt and shall not apply for the period belonging on the period of the enactment of this act and ending on March 15, 2017. As of November 2nd, 2015, the federal debt subject to the legal limit stood at 18 trillion. 18.45 trillion. Close of Tuesday, which was the latest day reported, it stood at 19.865. Tuesday of last week. I'm sorry, this is not an up-to-date article. It's because I had a problem with my laptop. So I was really interested in talking about these articles. So we're going to go with this because this is interesting because this happened. The 15th was Wednesday. So we'll see what happens. So basically, that means the federal debt increased by 1.4 trillion during the approximately 16 and a half months that Congress removed any legal limit on it. Congress has modified the debt limit 14 times since 2008. The Congressional Research Service reported in October 2015. A month before, Congress modified the debt limit for a 15th time since 2001 by including the language in the Bipartisan Budget Act suspending it. So as of on October 2008, so I mean, you know, so it happened on the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act under Bush, which created the Troubled Asset Relief Program that authorized the Treasury Secretary to purchase up to $700 billion assets from troubled financial institutions. That law also increased the debt limit from 10.6 trillion to 11.3 trillion. That was the last debt limit increase before the 2008 presidential election. Since then, borrowing by the federal government has increased the federal debt subject to the legal limit to the current 19.8 trillion, which exceeds the October 2008 limit by 8.55 trillion. We're going to keep an eye on this, and hopefully, I hope this doesn't affect DT's plans for the economy, to get this economy, to get the engine of this economy moving. So now I'd like to, you know, since today next week they're starting their the hearings with Comey, hearings with Comey are starting next week over Russia, you know, and on my show at ABC and on my show here out of Brooklyn, we've always, you know, the goal of it always is always to give you an idea of what our president Donald Trump has inherited, and I'm going to show you some things. And you know, I'm not saying it's unequivocally true, but I think we're close. I think we're close to what we could say, quote unquote. I'm not saying it's the model is, you know, there is subjectivity in this thing, in this modeling that we try to do, but let's just say, you know, there is subjectivity, but, and I'm not going to lie about that, but we do show with some reasoning how we arrive at our conclusion. So there is a method here, is what I'm trying to say. There is a method. So before we start, I just want to, you know, because I'm getting back into this article. Oh, by the way, I got killed on the bracket. Oh, before I get into the NCAA bracket, I got clobbered. My team was Seton University, and Iona, that was my other team. They got bumped. Just a little. Here's a little something for everybody to look at. And I thought this was interesting. We got Russia, Hamas, and Hezbollah are democratic, not terrorists. That's one headline. I guess basically what they're trying to say, they're freedom fighters. Ties between Russia and Taliban worry Afghanistan and U.S. officials. These are headlines. I'm not saying it's true. We're looking. Russia appears to be now helping out Taliban. By the way, Iran has there's an office in the Sahad city beacon, foreignpolicy.com, Long War Journal, Thomas Jocelyn. The Afghan Taliban has an office in the Sahad city of Iran. So, and this is another interesting article, which I'm going to read briefly, not now, but at some time. Libya, Russia's new frontier. So these are the headlines that I thought would we'd like to tie in at some point. Hezbollah are democratic and not terrorists. And then we got ties between Russia and the Taliban now worry Afghan and U.S. officials. Russia appears to now be helping the Taliban. And we got this other one, Libya, Russia's new frontier. Maybe that explains why the Obama-Clinton crime family coup d'etat. Gaddafi. Was it real? Was it fake? I don't know. But so those are some of the headlines that I wanted to add to this, because I want to get into this article, Sudan, that I wanted to do last week. I want to get into national reviews, the blind sheep prosecutors, Andrew McCarthy's Obama's Cash for Jihad program. It's a pretty interesting article. So I'm going to read the paragraph quickly, and I'm going to get into a little more on this. It's hard to decide what is the most important thing about the Obama's 1.7 billion payoff to the Iranian mullahs. You know, the 1 point. So it's either the ransom for the release, which is particularly induced Tehran to take more hostages, or this other one, which I talk about all the time, the pallets of untraceable currency loaded on multiple planes of the national airline regularly used by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps to arm Assad and facilitate terror. The withdrawals from a shady, which I'm going to look into, I haven't really got a chance to look at it, the withdrawals from a shady Treasury Department fund structured in a manner designed to conceal that money was being transferred to Iran. So that's what from there, that was my last time I read this article. And so now I'm going to go into the next, because I thought it was some stuff, pretty interesting stuff. So I'm continuing with the Cash for Jihad, the Andrew McCarthy Blind Sheiks, the Blind Sheiks prosecutor article on the National Review Online. Payoffs were made in Obama's pursuit of legacy adornment. The payoffs were made in Obama's pursuit of legacy adornment. Okay. The nuclear deal with Iran, he covered at any cost. You know, the period during which the president was quietly folding at the negotiating table at every bold campaign trial. Now, this is what really blew me away. In congressional testimony, Mark Dubowitz, this is according to Blind Sheik prosecutor Andrew McCarthy, the defense of democracies, did the math, and it came out to 11.9 billion that was given to Iran. But that literally may not be the half of it. In July, U.S. government officials told the Associated Press that Iran had repatriated a sum approaching 20 billion in the half year following implementation of the nuclear deal. Is that 20 billion from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iranian nuke deal? In addition to the and it's amazing to me how the press just doesn't want to talk about this. The mainstream media just doesn't want to talk about this. This is unconscionable. Is that in addition to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, 11.9 billion in oil revenues. Because this year, we've talked about it, Iran is doing 3 million a day. Iran is producing on OPEC now, according to all records that I've seen. We're close. I'm not saying I'm not there, but based on the data that we've seen, it looks like Iran right now, which I believe is statistically significant, that they're producing 3 barrels of oil, 3 million barrels of oil a day. Is in addition to the 1.7 billion settlement of a failed 70 arms deal. You believe this? The most transparent administration history. So the Blind Sheik prosecutor Andrew McCarthy is being sarcastic, and rightly so. According to the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, the scenario is that Iran got its mitts on 33.6 billion. So the staggering figure would amount to about 8% of Iran's entire annual GDP. It's unbelievable. When the news first broke that 40 million cash payment on the same day our hostages were released, so the administration, if the administration loaded up planes with 1.7 billion in foreign currency ransom, was a similar method used in connection with 11 oil funds, How about the 20 billion in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iranian nuke deal? Sanctions relief. Again, the administration won't say. Apparently relying on a non-existent privilege of confidentiality in international relations to justify withholding such information from Congress and the public. Once said, well, it's amazing because according to this article, Andrew McCarthy, one spectacle is the administration's tortured claims that Iran's use of its Obama windfalls. The White House and State Department gradually admit that they cannot know for certain how much Iran has diverted to the terrorist activities that the administration even more grudgingly admits Iran continues to underwrite. But rest assured, Obama strongly suspects that very small money makes its way to jihad. You believe this? Since Tehran must prioritize paying down crushing debt and repairing crippling infrastructure. How ridiculous, according to the blind sheik, Andrew McCarthy. It is pointless to point out, according to Andrew McCarthy, the blind sheik's prosecutor, it's pointless to track how particular dollar streams are spent by a terrorist regime. Iran had crushing debt and crumbling infrastructure before Obama started lining its pockets, yet it was committed to exporting revolutionary jihad. Absolutely true. So it spent its sparse resources on terrorism anyway. Consequently, according to Andrew McCarthy, the blind sheik's prosecutor, if the new dollars Iran is reeling in ostensibly spent on infrastructure or debt, the dollars that would otherwise have been spent on those activities are freed up for terrorist activity. So there you go. So the logic is unassailable. It don't make sense. So there it is. I mean, I'm going to read the rest of this tomorrow. And you know, he raised some interesting points that I wasn't aware of. The conceivably, I mean, the sources conceivably that we're looking at the least 33.6 billion, which amounts to 8% of Iran's total annual GDP. Great article. National Review Online, Andrew McCarthy, Obama's Cash for Jihad program. We talked about, not a tie-in, we talked about this. Now I'm doing some research on this. This is the other article that we read. Amani going to Iran claiming, and there have been instances, there is some data in the open source about the collapse of Assad. So I have articles claiming Assad that Soleimani went to Russia once, twice. Some articles claim he went there at least 4 times, trying to put together the Russian-Iranian alliance to help Assad. So Trump is the Russian agent, right? Right? And just to go it over quickly, and I'm going to go into Sudan. Material support, dollars, weapons, training, and human assets. 5 Iranian Quds Force leaders. This is the Obama, you know, if Obama Clinton crime family is material, Clinton administration is a criminal enterprise in the courtroom of American public opinion, then the Obama Clinton crime family is materially supporting radical Islamists with money, weapons, training, and human assets. And we say this is the Obama timeline. 5 Iranian Quds Force leaders released in Erbil, Iraq, Iran. Bergdol trade, Afghan Taliban. The Taliban governor goes all the way to the Sahadan city of Iran. That's the foreignpolicy.com article. Washington Free Beacon, Thomas Jocelyn. There it is. The payoff is Iran. 150 billion. We talked about this in the Andrew McCarthy article in National Review. OPEC market. Iran's producing 3 million barrels a day. 400 million to 1.7 billion. Andrew McCarthy's got it at the worst overall $33.6 billion, which amounts to approximately 8% of Iran's GDP. Unconscionable. Who gets the payoff? Iran. And I read an article on the Wall Street Journal article claiming that 400 million, there was a $400 million payment to Iran for the negotiation, the 18 months, when Kerry was negotiating with Mohammed Zarif. And I believe that's a bribe. Who gets the payoff? Iran. Egyptian, a lot of money to the Palestinian Authority, Hamas. Washington Free Beacon, Iran gives Hamas tens of millions of dollars, conceivably in rockets, to drop on Israel. Who gets the payoff? Iran. Egypt's Morsi Muslim Brotherhood, maybe 1.5 billion. I don't know if that is actually all that money, but they got a lot of money to Egypt, plus one jet fighter at least. Who gets the payoff? Iran. Morsi is in jail for espionage with Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah. He's in Egyptian jail, serving 20 years. Syria, 3 to 15 billion annually from Iran. Obama said money, weapons, and human assets not to fire at Assad. Assad, and they're firing at ISIS. So Obama's arming the Syrian rebels to defend Syria, to defend Assad, to defend Syria, to defend Assad, to defend Iran. So Iran gets that payoff. Benghazi, the cover-up was not Ansar al-Sharia, wasn't the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. It was the Iranian Quds Force with Hezbollah cover-up. Conceivably, the data hasn't come out. They came out with the Washington Times article with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn confirming what Kenneth Tillerman had put out in his book, Dark Forces, The Truth About Benghazi. I believe in all likelihood, in all probability, it was the Iranian Quds Force, General Soleimani plus Hezbollah. And then we got the North Korea, because we're going to be getting into North Korea soon. North Korea missile technology to Iran. The Obama negotiation of the Obama nuke negotiation deal with Iran team is action between North Korea and Iran. Yet the Obama negotiation team hates the Iranian nuke deal anyway. Unconscionable. So who gets the payoff there? Iran. Obama approves airliners to Iran using Boeing, and it's Boeing and Airbus, Iran's using airliners to smuggle weapons to Hezbollah. United States Senators Perdue and Israeli Representative Danny Danon, who gets the payoff? Iran. And just as a footnote, Big Doe, Palestinian Authority to Hamas, who gets the payoff? Iran. And there's a letter from 88 senators, 44 Republicans and 44 Democrats, asking the president, Obama at the time, are we sending money to the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, under humanitarian grounds, under national security grounds, knowing full well we don't know whether the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, is going to use this money for humanitarian aid or going to use this money for terrorism. So that's what the material support is. Before we get out of here, go into this. This is the Clock Boy and Omar al-Bashir. What is going on here? Now, I'm going in this direction with this thing for many reasons. It confirms a lot of stuff that we've been talking about at 77 WABC when we broadcast over there, and now we're broadcasting out of Brooklyn. So I'm going into this article, and we know that Dr. Matthew Levette is an expert on Iran and the Iranian Global Terror Network. So if we read before the new stuff I'm going to read now. Hezbollah engages in international terrorism. This is United States. This is James Owens versus the Republic of Sudan. A case I got off of the Investigative Project. Investigativeproject.com/cases. That's the case. So this is court papers. Isn't it interesting? You know. Hezbollah engages international terrorist operations in close tactical strategic cooperation with the Iranian government. Supreme leader of Iran, Khomeini, controls oversight of the media, the military, the Ministry of Intelligence, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Basaji militia, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force with Soleimani, all the entities that oversee the training, support of, and cooperation with terrorist groups, and that grant approval of terrorist attacks conducted with other groups answer to Khomeini. So Obama, did you get, for all this material support, did you get the approval? Did you get the approval of the Khomeini? Good question, right? Dr. Matthew Levitt testified that the Iranian government authorization of Hezbollah's assistance will be required for several reasons. The getting in bed with Al-Qaeda. After Al-Qaeda had not one but two fatwas are like declarations of war, so to speak, religious edicts, which that's basically what it is in Islam. In 92 and 96, announcing its intent to target the West, it was a dangerous proposition. As he mentioned earlier, Iranian leaders have their own version of rationality, but they are rational actors. That is, according to Dr. Matthew Levitt, that he believed that had to be approved again, so there would be reasonable or plausible deniability, overcoming this deep mistrust between the most radical jihadist Sunnis who are with Al-Qaeda, as we saw in the context of the aftermath of the war in Iraq, are sometimes all too eager to kill Shia, in particular, for the Shia on the other side to overcome their historical animosity. Sunnis is no small feat, but Iran works it out. And I think it is only because of their shared interest at that point, animosity towards the West, to target West interest, that they were able to decide to overcome this animosity and mistrust. So he's talking about like the narrative, which is I'm not saying there is validity to the Sunni Shia divide, and how the Iranian global terror network actually just blows away the Sunni Shia divide, and he's trying to explain the rationale behind it. This Dr. Matthew Levitt, that they were able to decide to overcome this animosity and mistrust between the Sunni and the Shia sects of Islam. And he says it's quite clear because it was for the express purpose of targeting the United States. It shouldn't surprise then that the type of training they received was specifically the type used in the East Africa embassy bombings. They expressed interest in it. We know they received at least videos and manuals about blowing up large buildings, unfortunately. So the declassified 1990 National Intelligence Estimate produced by the CIA stated that the president of Iran, which was I read it before. What was his name? Oh, there it is. Hojatul Islam, President Hojatul Islam, was the president of Iran. Right. Bombings. Okay. All right. So the terrorist attack carried out by Iran during that year was probably approved in advance by President Hojatul Islam, and other senior leaders. The planning and implementation of those operations are, however, probably managed by other senior officials, whom the president of Iran. Nonetheless, we believe that the Khomeini and the president of Iran would closely monitor and approve the plannings for any other attacks against the West or our allies. Support from Iran and Hezbollah was critical to al-Qaeda's execution and the 98 embassy bombings. Prior to its meetings with the Iranian officials and agents, al-Qaeda didn't possess the technical expertise required to carry out the embassy bombings. So this is, in the 90s, al-Qaeda received training in Iran, Lebanon, which is Hezbollah, on how to destroy large bombings with sophisticated, powerful explosives. The government of Iran was aware of and authorized this training and assistance. Hence, for the reasons described above, the court finds that Iranian defendants provided material aid and support to al-Qaeda for the 1990 embassy bombings and are liable for plaintiff's damages. So I'm going to read one more paragraph and I'm going to end this on this. So now we're looking at the logic behind what's going on with this Iranian this Sunni Shia nexus in the Iranian global terror network, and how it actually what's the proof? And the proof is in the bombings that took place in the 90s in these embassies in Africa. And this is Dr. Matthew Levitt's testimony on this case. On this case here, James Owens et al. Versus the Republic of Sudan. Now, I'm going to get to the gist of this, and we're going to get out of here. The Republic of Sudan's support for bin Laden and Al Qaeda. So this is interesting now, because I'm really excited about this. Tomorrow I'm going to get in depth on this, because I'm going to see about the tie-in with this with bin Laden. Let's see. The Sudanese government support for bin Laden and Al Qaeda were also important to the execution of the two 1998 embassy bombings. Critically, Sudan provided safe haven in a country near the two U.S. embassies. The Sudanese defendants gave material aid and support to bin Laden and Al Qaeda in several ways. Sudan harbored and provided sanctuary to terrorists in their operational logistic supply network. Bin Laden and Al Qaeda received the support and protection of the Sudanese intelligence and military from foreign intelligence services and rival militants. Sudan provided bin Laden and Al Qaeda hundreds of Sudanese passports. Wow, that's crazy. The Sudanese intelligence service allowed Al Qaeda to travel over the Sudan-Kenya border without restriction, permitting the passage of weapons and money to supply the Nairobi terrorist cell. Finally, Sudan's support of Al Qaeda was official Sudanese government policy. Wow. So I'm going to read this over again. I'm excited. So I'm going to read this again. I'm going to get some data to support the early parts of the read from this court case, James Owens versus the Republic of Sudan. We got this off the investigativeproject.org/cases. So we're going to continue on this. I'm really excited about it. I'll have some more data tomorrow. We're going to keep moving this forward. Thank you, Jesus. We're back on YouTube Live. I had a problem last week with my laptop, and I apologize. Thank you, everyone. We are now silver. We are a silver broadcaster, VIP on Scope. I'm getting ready to do my Scope Live broadcast. So this is the Frankie Russo Show. I'll see you tomorrow night. I'm going to try to get on early, 7, 8, something like that, but it's going to be early. I'll see you in the future.